Hello everyone, how are you doing? Thank you for taking the time to come here and listen to Hitachi and what we're doing. My name's Phil Townsend. I work for Hitachi Consulting, but I work as part of what I think is one of the best companies on the planet, and that's Hitachi. We're over 900 different subsidiary organizations working in many different fields across the world, different industries, different parts of the industry, different technologies, and our focus, our entire strategy is built around driving co-creation with customers, but truly focusing on what we call social innovation, which is making a difference to the world. As Hitachi Consulting, we're one of the flagship companies of Hitachi that works with customers as part of that social innovation mission, that social innovation strategy, and co-creating, as I said, building solutions, transforming customers' businesses, and really driving value to society. And our goal really as a company is to take technology and blend that technology with operational practice, operational capability, and really drive some truly fantastic outcomes for our customers and for the world. As you saw from the video, the world is going through some very rapid transformation, and when you start to look at some of the biggest challenges that we have as society, whether it be challenges in healthcare, whether it be challenges in transportation, how we capture and provide energy for the environment, whatever it is, Hitachi's view and vision is to look at those problems, look at those challenges, and truly try to determine how we can drive effectiveness with our customers, how we can bring about real change, how we can bring about contribution, not just to the bottom line, which is where I think a lot of companies focus, is how do I drive bottom line contribution, how do I drive more profit? But looking at new business models, how do I drive growth? How do I drive top line contribution? But also, how can I be more compliant and how can I bring value to society? And that's a theme that you'll continue to hear us talk about as we go through the rest of this presentation. I think it goes without saying that we're seeing a very rapid transformation in society, and that's being driven by technology. The last decade, we've gone from the last mile of connectivity to ubiquitous connectivity to fully integrated connectivity. And that's a journey that's happened in a very short space of time. And what that's doing is it's driving down the cost, it's driving down the barriers to entry, it's driving the pace of innovation at levels that we've never seen before. And it's enabling new economies. It's enabling new ecosystems, new capabilities to be put together. But I think the thing that's most interesting to me when I look at how technology is transforming and how our customers are looking at technology and how industries are evaluating and leveraging technology is that technology has become such a big part of our lives and what we do. I think we're actually forgetting something here, and that is that when I look at the generation that consume the services and the products and the solutions and the value that we as companies build, when I look at the generation, when I look at the people that are consuming that are buying that are using that, their expectation is that it will be digital. 10 years ago, you couldn't say that. 10 years ago, the workplace was the most advanced piece of our lives. You walked into a company and you were amazed at how great. I got something on my desk, looks really good. Now, outside of the workplace is the most technologically advanced piece of our lives, and it's integrated into our lives. And that generational shift is what's really driving the demand and the thirst for that innovation. So if you're an organization and you're thinking about, well, I've got all this technology, artificial intelligence, virtual reality, I'm looking at serverless environments, I'm looking at cloud, I'm just wondering, how does it fit? How do I get value from it? Don't blink, because if you blink, you will be obsolete. Those technologies are very real and becoming very mainstream very quickly. And so as we think about that, and as we think about those technologies, what we're aiming to do here in the next 30 minutes or so is not talk to you about the technologies themselves, But we're going to talk to you about how our customers have achieved breakthrough results with those technologies and are continuing to invest and grow and drive value in a way that is not just transforming their businesses, transforming their value, but transforming the way they are perceived and contributing to society. Before we get into that, a quick word about the technologies themselves. You've heard a lot at this conference about IoT, cloud, and other capabilities. All of these things are complex systems, but they're not complicated. They don't have to be complicated. There's a lot of ways to simplify and enable those technologies to be part of your environment. But the way I look at these technologies is I look at them in the same way that I look at how we want social media. We want to be connected. We want to be connected. We want to know what's going on in the world. We want to read news. We want to get updates and status. These machines are no different. They want to connect. They want to interface. They want to work together. And they want to drive value as part of your overall system. And bringing about that connectivity and bringing about that capability is part of the essential ingredient of enabling these technologies to be valuable to your environment. And so, as we go through this conversation, what you'll hear about is not just digital businesses and how companies have put digital at the core of their operation, not just around connectivity and how we're connecting all these devices and bringing that information together, and not just about the transformation that's happening in industry and manufacturing. What you'll also hear about is how we're trying to drive what we call Society 5.0. And Society 5.0 is where you live in an environment that's not just fully connected, but is truly enhancing and enriching the quality of lives for everyone on this planet, whether it be healthcare, transportation, communication, whether it be how we drive nutrition, farm to fork, for example. All of those things are what we consider to be part of our Smart Society initiative and part of our social innovation theme. And at Hitachi, we actually call this internally the double bottom line. That's where we're driving financial success for our customers through co-creation of new capabilities to drive significantly better outcomes for them as a business, but also making a real strong contribution to the transformation of society. And so it's with great pleasure that I'd now like to introduce Ellen Dowd, my esteemed colleague, who's going to walk you through some real-life use cases of customers that have seen breakthrough transformation. Thank you, Ellen.
Thank you. Hello. Good morning. How's everyone doing today? Everyone having a good conference? I don't know. We're going to have to hear a little more. We're all in this together, guys. Everybody having a good conference? There we go. We need some energy in this room. So I always say that one of the things I don't like to do in this world is follow a Brit when it comes to presenting. There's just something infinitely, no matter what he says, although he said some great things, he just sounds credible and very soothing. And I've been called a lot of things in my life. Soothing is not one of them. So bear with me while I try to ramp up the energy level a little bit in this room. So my name's Ellen Dowd. I've been with Hitachi for almost 15 years now. It'll be 15 years in January. And this is after a career of really a lot of bouncing around. I did the consulting shuffle for a good chunk of my career, moving around. And I've really found a home at Hitachi. And part of the reason for that is this commitment to social innovation. So this is something that really is deep down in our DNA. When we talk about the double bottom line, we mean it. It is part of everything that we do. And it's a really inspiring way to get up in the morning and think about how we're going to build businesses that can also impact the world. And both of those things are equally important. This is not a nonprofit. Would love to someday work for a nonprofit and actually, put my energy that way. This is a for-profit business, as most of you guys are probably in, that is also focused on delivering results for our customers while also making a positive impact. So that sounds very lofty. Sounds a little pie in the sky, I think, sometimes to some people. So let's talk, and we get accused sometimes of it being marketing messaging, so I understand all of those things. So let's talk about a very specific example that can help bring it to light. So we have a customer in the UK, it's a utility. They provide water to, I think, hundreds of thousands of homes and businesses in a section of the UK. So they provide drinking water coming in and wastewater going out. So since we've got sort of a smallish crowd, I'm going to do a little audience participation here. Does anyone have a guess what keeps water executives up at night? If you run a water distribution company, what do you think keeps you up at night more than anything else? Tim, that's a good one. That's not actually the right answer, though. Leaks. Leaks is what water executives think about every night when they go to bed and every morning when they wake up. And the reason for that is, if you think about it, detecting a water leak is incredibly challenging. It is typically underground. It is pulled by the force of gravity when it leaks. There is no real way of knowing if you have a water leak when you're a utility company, except when your customers complain about their billing. When you get calls to your call center from a neighborhood that says, why did my bill just go up 3 times? Why am I paying $1,000, or pounds in this case, instead of $100 a month for my water? That's how you know there's a leak. That is way too downstream in the process to know that you've got a leak in the process. So we worked with this customer to look at it and say, okay, we've got to do 2 things. We've got to get better at detecting the leaks, actually figuring out where they're coming from so we can do mitigation once they happen. And we also have to get better at predicting when we're going to have a leak. What are the weather factors that predict that? What are the usage factors that predict that? So they implemented this solution that has enabled them to, using the measure that they think most accurately reflects the progress, they've implemented a solution that is, by 24% in the first year, has brought down the number of customer disputes about their bills. Customer disputes is the best leading indicator of how many leaks they've got. So that came down by 24% in that first year, but we actually think it's going to come down much more significantly in the second year because we've got more data that's coming in from these sensors. We've got better algorithms that are constantly learning and improving. So this is a huge operational efficiency for this company. They did it to save money. I mean, they did it to drop it to their bottom line and also provide a better customer experience. But if you take a step back, we're also using less water. In the grand scheme of things, water is in a huge shortage. We're creating a more trusted relationship between that customer and the provider, and a better community where there's some level of trust between society and the citizens and the institutions. So that is the double bottom line. It is not sacrificing business benefit for the betterment of society. It's instead looking at how we can use business progress, business benefit to drive that betterment for society. Does that make sense? You guys with me? All right, so let's talk about what that commitment actually means in terms of how we have to do business a different way. So I had the opportunity last week. I was in Tokyo and I went to Hitachi's Social Innovation Forum that we do in Tokyo every year. Think of it as the Oracle OpenWorld of the Hitachi ecosystem. So this is, tens of thousands, I don't know the exact count, tens of thousands, if not more than 100,000 people come from all over the world, pretty heavily Japanese focused, but we do have some global people that come in from around the world. And we talk about what we've been doing, where we're taking our technology, where we're taking our innovation to the next level. So this is, you go onto the show floor, you see, you get welcomed by our next generation robot, and then you go see our innovations that we're doing in trains. So it's all, as you would imagine, one of these shows to be. So our president and CEO is a man named Higashihara-san, and he's very impressive, and he's also very lovely, and somebody that I respect a lot. So he stood up to give the keynote address. This is the initial, I'm going to kick off this conference to all of these thousands of people who are here to hear what Hitachi is going to go do next. He shocked me as he started. There was a video, probably not that different than the video we showed. And he stood up, and I expected him to talk about innovation and social innovation and our mission and what we're doing. And instead, he spent the first 15 minutes of about a 45-minute address talking about empathy. And it was very, very interesting because he wasn't talking about empathy. I at first thought he was going to talk about how we have to protect empathy from all the innovation that's happening. You know, our inability to connect with each other as well as we used to. But that's actually not what he was talking about. What he was talking about is the role that empathy plays in driving innovation. If we can put ourselves in our customer's shoes, in our user's shoes, in our partner's shoes, we are in so much better of a position to really co-create that new way of doing business, that new system that's actually going to transform the world. So it was a really interesting way to think about how we all need to change the way we're thinking about innovation. All right, so this is where we start with the buzzword bingo. We're going to talk about ecosystems. If you have a card, buzzword bingo, you can mark off ecosystem now. You know, it's been really interesting. This has been an incredibly inspiring conference, and as it always is, right? Oracle knows how to put on a show, no doubt, and they're doing such great things in the technology space. But, you know, you hear so many of the same themes that are happening when you come together and you talk to folks. And so I just wanted to talk a little bit about the true reality when we talk about an ecosystem for companies like, we'll use Hitachi and Oracle as an example. So Hitachi, $85 billion a year in revenue, 850, I think Phil said 900, so I may be off, companies, everything from technology to industrial components to bullet trains to electron microscopes. We're all over the map and everything in between. Huge company. So Oracle, as everybody in this room is fully aware, is a technology giant. They are a powerhouse, 40 billion in revenue, and I think you could argue that Oracle does a better job of building an ecosystem than any company out there, right? Just go, I don't know, to the exhibit hall, go to the partner presentations, walk around this conference, and you see this ecosystem that they've created over their time in being in business. So both of these companies are used to, quite frankly, dictating their industry, being at the center of their business. I have bad news for both of us. Sorry, Oracle. Sorry, Hitachi. We are no longer at the center of our own universe. We can't be. The digital changes that are happening have really changed the way that we think about this ecosystem. Two things. First of which is the customer has to be at the center of it. And this is something that, you know, Phil talked about, changing consumer perceptions and expectations. That's equally true in the B2B world. That's equally true when our customers think about how they want to make their changes. And all of you all have customers as well. You need to be thinking about putting them at the center of your universe as well. So that's one reason. The second reason is there is no one dominant player, and there will not be one dominant player. Again, sorry, Oracle, sorry, Hitachi. We have to embrace the idea that we have to be bringing in partners, working with them in a really different way, really thinking about how we're going to connect our value chain in new and different ways than what we've ever done before. So partners are critically important, but we have to change the way we think about bringing those partners together around the customer. So I've been told I need to pause more when I talk, so if there are awkward silences, that's what I'm doing, just so you know. So let's talk about economies, these new economies. Again, another word for your buzzword bingo. We really are seeing a fairly tectonic shift when it comes to the creation of these new economies. And what usually happens when we stand up to talk about these new economies, and what I've done in the past when I've stood up to talk about these new economies, is talk about the blazing trails that are happening in each one of these industries and all of the new stuff that's going on. So you talk about a sharing economy, and it's easy to talk about the fact that Airbnb has amassed in 4 years more hotel rooms than Hilton did in '93. That's an easy thing to talk about. But here's what I think. I think that most of us cannot see ourselves or see our companies in those models when we talk about them in those terms. Most of us are not digitally native companies. Most of us have a background in a traditional model that's driving how we think about those economies. So although those examples are inspiring, and I think we can learn a lot from them, let's talk about an example that is a little bit maybe easier to understand how a traditional company might be able to embrace one of these new economic structures, these new economies that are being created by digital. So let's talk about, we have another client, another customer. I'm going to talk about our customers because we love them. Going to talk about them a lot today. So we have another customer. This customer is about as old school as you can possibly imagine from an industry point of view. Their entire function, they're an enormous multi-billion-dollar company, but their entire function is to provide parts to the oil and gas industry. So these parts are things that get fitted on rigs and refineries and pipelines and various components, but it's all pretty small part components, right? So what they're seeing is two things are happening to disrupt their industry. The first one is alternative energy and all of the pressures that are facing oil and gas companies are causing them to tighten all of their spending and go to their suppliers and say, you guys have to tighten along with us. We're going to have to figure out a way to do this cheaper, more efficiently, because we are getting bled for our margin. So that's problem number one. Problem number two, they're seeing the rise of new technologies. They're seeing blockchain. They're seeing a different way of doing business. So when they see that, they are looking to the future and saying, uh-oh, this isn't good. We're going to get cut out of this. We are going to be disrupted by what's happening in this industry. We can feel it. We see it. We know it's coming. So rather than, these guys are impressive. So rather than waiting for the oil and gas companies to realize they're a middleman, go directly to the steel companies and say, hey, we just want to buy your steel, turn it into a tube, and we'll make it a pipeline. We don't need these guys over here. What they've done is said, we are now going to move from a product-based model to a service-based model. We are going to be the connected supply chain, be the connected value chain for the entire ecosystem. So they are investing millions and millions of dollars in building what they believe is going to be an industry-leading blockchain environment, blockchain ecosystem, technology platform, and enablers that are really going to help them provide the service of connecting that supply chain end to end. So it's a really forward-thinking way of thinking about how do you embrace these new economies. All right. So forgive me, I get dry mouth. I'm going to get a little water here. So let's talk a little bit about what this means in reality. So there are a few examples in there, a few specifics that we've talked about, but this is still pretty pie in the sky, right? How do you actually turn this into an execution model that we can all embrace, that we can all figure out how to go do and be successful? So this was referred to yesterday as the doom and despair slide. It is not intended to be. So let me put a positive spin on what's happening here. So we've got a really, I think, interesting situation. One thing I've learned this week, you guys probably already knew this, I'm a slow learner. Consultants, technology strategists, product managers, analysts, we love numbers. We love statistics. We love to flash them up there and scare everybody into what's happening in the world. So I'm going to do a little bit of that, but then we're going to talk about how we can actually move forward. So a couple things. The good news, the very good news, especially for B2B companies, especially for industrial companies, the good news is the benefits are real. This is not hype. It is reality. It does deliver digital, IoT, blockchain. These solutions, this transformation really does deliver results. A couple of numbers I'll call your attention to. In the B2B world specifically, 5 times, that's the amount of revenue increase over competition that the digital adopters are getting. People in the top quartile of digital adoption versus the other 75% are seeing 5 times more revenue growth. That's actually pretty stunning. 80%, that's the average increase over a 3-year period that they're seeing relative to their competition on operating margin. Those are real numbers. These are big results that people are seeing. So now for the doom and gloom, the despair, the pit of despair part. It's challenging. It's actually really, really hard to do this. And a lot of companies are finding that it's a lot harder than they expected, and it's a lot harder than it was to, for example, let's talk about some other revolutions that have happened. The internet revolution was certainly a big change, but it was a simple set of technologies to adopt and a simple set of principles to put into your business. Here's a new sales channel. We're going to use this sales channel to sell a different way. It was certainly challenging and opened up a lot of opportunity, but it really wasn't as hard as what we're talking about. The interconnectivity of devices, the interconnectivity of humans, all of these challenges are really, really hard. So what does that mean? 70% are getting past POC. If you're not getting past POC, you're never able to see the benefits. You're just not going to get there, right? So how do we talk about this in a different way? How do we get people to move beyond the testing phase, beyond the POC phase, into a real production solution? In 64%, that's the number of people who say that they think they're not moving fast enough inside their companies. My esteemed colleague, well, Phil is an esteemed colleague, so is Beverly Ryder. She presented yesterday and said she thinks that number should be 99, and I actually tend to agree with that. Nobody's moving fast enough. Okay, so this, I've got names for all my slides. The last one was doom and gloom. This is the Skittles slide. So let's talk about what is the way out? What is the way out of the pit of despair that we just talked about? So let's think about how we have traditionally done projects. On the left-hand side, you'll see sort of the traditional project approach, even when you're talking about innovation projects, right? Even when you're talking about adopting new technologies. What's tended to happen over the course of the adoption curve is we're taking traditional approaches and trying to use them to make digital work. And we're seeing some results. You see business outcomes, but those things come in a trickle. When we have this funnel of ideas that go through this traditional process of being vetted by leadership, doing a proof of concept, getting a point solution out, you're gonna have success, but that success is going to be very slow. Not that many ideas are getting through. You've got constraints, you've got restrictions. On the right-hand side, how do you open up that funnel? How do you think about this in a different way? How do you get more things to come through? A couple ways that we think about it is this whole idea of co-creation and doing this in a different model, getting the people in a room that actually need to define the future. And that's not just the future of the solution, that's the future of the business. So there are stakeholders everywhere in the organization that are going to be impacted by this. And it's not the kind of impact that we've all seen when we've done ERP implementations, and you have to transform an AP clerk from doing, doing manual processes to doing automated processes. This is major shifts. These are completely different job functions we're talking about, completely different ways of operating. We really have to be thinking about designing the business model, getting that consensus early. And then we talk about proof of value instead of proof of concept. Now, I'm one of those people that actually thinks those are two different things. Not everybody does. Some people think that proof of value is just another way of talking about POCs. To me, proving the value requires putting it into production in a piloted and controlled way. But you've got to actually see those results, the actual business benefits, not the modeled benefits, not the anticipated benefits, but the actual benefits put into production in a connected way. And then you start to see this idea of having these solutions come together in a connected value chain, and then you achieve what we call, and Gartner and others, we're not the only ones, call digital scale. So this is our idea, our approach, how we think about changing the way we do co-creation with our customers. Okay, now we're going to talk stories, because stories are what make this all come to life, right? If we don't hear the examples, I mean, one of the things I've gotten out of this conference is the most fun things are the conversations that I have in the hallway after a session or at dinner or at a party, listening to people who are out in the real world doing these implementations and coming up with these genius ideas for how they're going to change their business. You guys are the ones that can see your industry. You know what your businesses are. You know what should be changing. You may just not always know the how, or you may not always have the buy-in. But you have vision around this, and there's some really exciting stuff happening out in the world. So we're going to talk about a couple of different industry examples, but before we do that, back to this idea of social innovation. So we look at the UN Sustainability Goals, Sustainable Development Goals, 17 of them, they've been put in place. They're looking to put real KPIs and targets to achieve them by 2030. These are things like end poverty. That'll be easy, right? Shouldn't be a problem. We'll just end poverty around the world. But the way that we look at this is we should be thinking about when we're telling our client success stories, we also need to tell the story of how this is making the world better, because that's good for our customers, it's good for us, and it's how we really want to be thinking about how we do these things. So we've identified 6 industries that we focus in, and we focus in these for really 3 reasons. The first one is we happen to know a lot about these industries. We operate in them. We know how to, we exist in these industries, and we're customers as well as suppliers in these industries. We also where we think that the industries are going to have the biggest impact on the world. These are the industries that are going to change the world. Transportation is going to change the way we think about mobility. Manufacturing is going to change the way we think about producing products and also buying products, or maybe not even buying products, sharing them, moving to new economies. So these are the industries that we believe are going to drive the most change. And then the third is, this is where you can see the most business benefit. If you're operating in one of these industries, there is money for the taking if you adopt these technologies in the right way. Sorry, water. Okay, so transportation and logistics. This is one of my favorite case studies just because it is so plain and simple, and it's beautiful simple, as they say in the design world. It is real results that came with a very specific and targeted solution that have really changed the business for this company. This is one of the biggest transportation companies on the planet. They have 240,000 trucks in their fleet. These are the fleet of trucks they use for rentals, so people come and rent these trucks. They're doing, on average, every year, 2.8 million repairs and spending $600 million on repairing these vehicles. 300 million of those repairs are just labor, pure labor alone. And these 6,000 technicians they have, average age is 58 years old. So they're looking at their situation saying, okay, we're spending way too much money on repairs. If we can just save 15 minutes per repair, not 3 hours, not this huge chunk of time, 15 minutes per repair. We can model this out and look at the labor savings alone. Doesn't get into parts, doesn't get into any other parts of the equation. The labor savings alone is $18.2 million a year. What's exciting about this is a forward-thinking company. This is a company that wants to disrupt the industry. So they could take that $18.2 million and drop it to their bottom line and increase their shareholder value. But what they're doing is they're investing it. They're investing it in their digital transformation. They're saying, great, we're going to use this successful project to fund the next initiative, and that one will give us returns, and we'll use that to fund the next. So it's a really exciting opportunity for them. A couple of additional use cases they're looking at, really driving towards more, this is a prescriptive repair solution that they've gone with for the first project to get that 18 million. Then we can look at, let's move up the value chain of the repair cycle. Let's move earlier in the process. Let's start to predict where we're going to see those failures. Let's start to be preventative about how we do this. And then those savings get even bigger as we go. All right, so that was transportation. Next is automotive manufacturing. So manufacturing is really interesting to me as a digital use case. And the reason why is because, especially if you look in the US, manufacturing is the slowest progression of change in an industry of anything that's out there. Now, it's a little bit different in Europe, and it's a little bit different in Asia. And part of the reason is we've got lower cost to operate in Asia, and they're typically newer. The manufacturing plants that are there are newer. So therefore, the rate of change is a little bit better. In Europe, they have very limited manufacturing capability they do on the island, and when they do it with excellence, right? It is a point of pride to have German engineered or Swedish engineered cars, equipment, other things. But in the US, we had an industrial revolution, and most of our manufacturing operations were built a very long time ago, and modernizing those is very, very challenging. So we have a customer. This is a Global 1000 automotive company. They make 10 million cars annually, 48 manufacturing facilities around the world, 250 billion in revenue. Gives you an idea of scale. Pretty big company. So they look at this and they say, okay, we know that we need to move towards being a mobility company. If I want to be a mobility company and a mobility provider, we've got to do more than manufacture cars and sell them. We've got to be thinking about new models, new ways to interact with our consumer, new ways to change the market. But we have to start by modernizing our manufacturing. So they're looking at a true optimized factory initiative. How do we take individual technologies, IoT, digital twins, predictive maintenance, point solutions, how do we take all of this and really transform the way that we run our manufacturing? So their first set of use cases, they're looking at really building these in a very connected way. Energy efficiency, manufacturing, the highest cost outside of parts and outside of labor to run a manufacturing operation is energy. That's the first one. Second one is predictive maintenance. It's an easy use case. We love it because it's low-hanging fruit. And then finally, reduce safety incidents. So they have a huge worker safety problem. So by looking at video intelligence, sensor enabling all of their manufacturing operations, doing machine learning and AI, they can reduce their energy consumption, reduce their safety incidents, and increase their productivity. Okay, so those are my examples. With that, I'm going to invite Phil to come back on the stage. We're going to sum up together, talk a little bit about, we're almost done here, guys, talk a little bit about where to go from here in our partnership with Oracle. And then I think there's a raffle of some kind, so you don't want to leave. So.
Thanks very much, Ellen. And thank you everyone for listening. Just a quick summary, I think a lot of information there. Achieving breakthrough value from using IoT and technology, it's hard, but it's definitely not impossible. And if you hadn't guessed it, and I'm sure you have, there's an entire industry. If you look at what Oracle's doing, if you look at what Hitachi's doing, if you look at what other players in the industry are doing, there's an entire industry that is leading forward in these enabling technologies, these digital technologies, these digital disruptors, and bringing those to you in a way that will enable you to really achieve transformation. And so putting focus on the business outcomes, working and creating value through co-creation. I think, Ellen, you talked a lot about that, right? Yep. With what's happening with some of our customers. It is about co-creation. We don't know it all, right? We have great OT expertise as Hitachi. There's great technology expertise out there in the industry, but you know your business, you know your customers, you know your industries, and you know exactly how you'd like to disrupt and transform those industries, or leverage the disruption that's happening, or in fact, take advantage of the technologies. And so it's really about co-creation. It's about working with you, and hopefully, as Ellen described, there's a very well-structured process that we as Hitachi go through to enable that to really drive that breakthrough transformation. But it takes some courage. You've got to be a little bit brave, I think, to go forward and execute. Our focus as a company continues to remain on social innovation, and we'd like to encourage our customers along the same lines, is to think about not only how you can transform your business, but how we can make this world a much better place to live in. It's not that it's a bad place right now. I think we've come a long way, but I think, there's some
We can always do better.
We can always do it a bit better. So, obviously we're at Oracle OpenWorld, and it's very important to say thank you to everyone here, but also to say thank you to Oracle for putting on such a great event. And Oracle brings a lot of expertise, a lot of capability that, matched with what Hitachi, and particularly obviously Hitachi Consulting are doing, we're able to help you to move to the next level.